Welcome everyone to another Spotlight interview here in the Primal Trust Academy and community. My name is Dr. Kathleen King. I'm the founder of Primal Trust, and today we have with us Steve Connolly here to share his story of developing Primal Trust and overcoming an incredible journey of being debilitated for many years with chronic fatigue syndrome and other things that he'll get into. And I brought Steve on to spotlight him because he really exemplifies perseverance and the development of courage after, in his words, he's described years of being demoralized and defeated by, ongoing chronic illness that lasts for years and years on end. And so for any of you who are listening out there who feel like there's no hope for things turning around because it's been 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, well, Steve is an example that there's always hope. There's always potential for turnaround. The body has a capacity. He is still on his journey, and he is an example of someone who is living their primal trust and living the process. And Steve also he's a wealth of knowledge. He is actually one of the mentors that we have in the Primal Trust Academy and community as well. And I appreciate his vast background of understanding regarding chronic illness healing, neuroplasticity. He's done so many programs, and he's also learned how to put them together. And he's gifted at seeing patterns and seeing process and helping people with their process as well. So today I want to spotlight you, Steve, and your process and what you've learned to be able to help listeners who might relate to your journey of being severely ill for a long, long time and what's possible when you start putting things into place properly. So why don't you give us a little bit of your journey and what you've dealt with so people have an understanding of where you've been and where you are now.
Okay, well, thank you for all of that. That was a lovely introduction. So my journey, I suppose, I thought it started 26 years ago. And in fact, it went back much further than that, I know now. But so 26 years ago, I started getting a lot of bowel issues, a lot of tiredness. They kind of came at the same time, kind of a surprise. And unfortunately, things sort of like continued from there. My approach to that was really to just carry on, to push through and keep going. And I worked in quite a high pressured job for not just full time, but extra hours. And I just kept going. And I ended up in a situation where I was booming and busting. I was in the office, on it, doing a great job Monday to Friday. And then I would get home on Friday and I would just collapse. In fact, most days I'd get home and I would collapse because there was nothing to keep me going. I didn't have anything there. So it was literally, I had to force myself to work, get the adrenaline to make things happen. Otherwise, nothing happened. I was in shutdown and freeze. So I had a lot of post-exertional malaise. I had POTS, chronic fatigue syndrome I was diagnosed with, Crohn's disease I was diagnosed with, irritable bowel syndrome I was diagnosed with, some endocrine things I won't bore you with. Other things, that's enough, isn't it? So a lot of that started 26 years ago. I carried on working and things just got worse and worse because I didn't stop. I didn't try and take care of myself. I didn't try and do anything about it. I was in denial. And eventually, I just collapsed. There was a straw that broke the camel's back. And I collapsed. And I don't say I collapsed in any kind of, I don't even have any shame about that because, I tolerated awfulness for years and years and years. Absolute, real low quality of life. And I was on a hamster wheel with the only option was to stop. And if I stopped, I knew that there was nothing left of me. So, yeah, so that was my story, if you like. And then about 7 years ago, my family split, and that was just really hard. And that's when I really did properly, in the end, collapse, and I had to stop working, and focus on, my health and my family. Yeah. So at that point, I was at that point, actually, I was just learning about brain training. I'd worked with the OHC in London, doing some kind of stop process kind of stuff. A few years later, I did the ANS Rewire with Dan Lufa. But these things didn't really go deep enough for me. I was finding them really good. They made sense, which was great for me. They made sense. There was logic behind it. There was science behind it. And you got something out of it. But frequently, the big win on going on the program only lasted, a few weeks or whatever, because it was all based on hope and this new thing, and I'm going to be better and I'm going to be fixed. What a relief. But unfortunately, that it's not as straightforward as that, and so that euphoria doesn't carry you forwards. So it was a few years still, and there was some dark times, I have to say. And eventually I made my way to DNRS, which was good. And it appealed to me because there was training involved. And I really felt that training was required. I didn't really understand very well what the dysfunction was at this point, but training seemed like a good idea. And I got into the training, and again I got the euphoria of a new program. But again, it just didn't go deep enough. And there's countless people I've spoken to, and I've said, I've brought many of them over to Primal Trust now, in fact. But I would say to them, this just doesn't really get to the thing. The thing that's not right. It's not really going down there. So it was. I had a coach at the time, and I was really pushing her about this isn't getting there. This isn't quite it. And she said, you should talk to Kathleen King. And that was almost 18 months ago. Yeah, so that's how I found my way to Primal Trust. And the other thing to say is that I was reticent about spending more money on more programs. So I am not really, although it looks like I've gone and just bought loads of programs, that wasn't what happened, because this is over 7 years. So it was really about, does this make sense? And whilst DNRS had seemed like, yeah, this is training, this is good. The Primal Trust for me was about getting into that deeper thing, which I felt, I didn't know really what it was, but that's what I felt I needed, and that's what Primal Trust seemed to be offering, and so it proved.
For the listeners who are listening, what would you say your thing was? What's the thing?
So, so I said it all started, 26 years ago. It really didn't. And one of the reasons that I was in denial and just kept pushing and carried on is because half of the stuff had been there all along. And so I was so totally blended with it, and it was just me. And in many ways, it was just normal. And although some of it I knew wasn't normal, some of it I didn't know wasn't normal. So it all goes back to, a long time ago, very early on, and I don't really have any memories, which again made it difficult to kind of know what this is, because I didn't have any memories of stuff going on. So there's undoubtedly developmental trauma with myself. And, I didn't really, it's been a real slow burn of finding that out, because not everybody does know what caused it.
Yeah. You're describing the discovery of the identity that was formed in the first place that often results in an illness patterning. So, the thing is a way that we cope with life, a way our nervous system gets set up for life that for some of us puts us into that chronic illness pathway. And the Primal Trust discovery is about sifting your identity out of the illness identity and becoming who you would have been if you would have been free to be yourself in the first place, and teaching yourself how to do that and discovering what that is. And it's difficult because it's hidden. We have all these protection mechanisms in our psyche from finding us, from finding the thing, a protection mechanism that keeps us focusing on fixing and on this short-term hope of fixing some inherently broken self that is actually not broken in the first place. So tell us a little bit about, now you've started the you started Primal Trust 18 months ago. What happened to you? What has been the lift in discovering you, and who is coming forward now through this process?
So Steve is coming forward. So it was quite early on in Primal Trust, really, that I got I got a nice shift already, because the whole adult main personality concept really spoke to me. And I realized how collapsed I had become. And it's interesting because although I had long-standing issues, I'd had a really successful business career in a high pressurized environment. And it almost seems like a complete paradox about how that could have happened in the midst of all of this. But really, I was using my dysfunction within that role, because it was all about performance improvement, process improvement, transformation, change, fixing things, identifying problems. It was almost as if all my patterns, I'd monetized them as a career. I say almost, that's exactly what I did. So I'd had this business persona, but there were these issues underneath. But then I lost that level of confidence that I did have, went. So when I came to Primal Trust and I realized kind of what I'd lost, because I didn't know what had gone, or that I could have it back. And so that was just so helpful in and of itself, because I was able to grasp a lot of those things back. And that gave me a lot of strength back, I suppose. And that was without really getting into the deeper things. But I've had quite a lot of symptoms go, so in the last 6 months, and I only realized this last week. And I was writing on the forum to somebody that was, we were talking about POTS, and postural orthostatic intolerance. and I was writing down, and I haven't had this for 6 months now. And it was as I was writing it, I was thinking, oh, right. And I would get that when I was really bad. That was like when I was most collapsed and most crashed and dipped and demoralized and low. That's when that would come. And I thought, wow, that's a real thing that I haven't had that at all.
And it's even more amazing when you don't even realize you haven't had that at all, because you haven't been tracking the symptom. Like, that is the recovery, if you will, is the forgetting of our dysfunction. It's the forgetting of that identity, the forgetting of like, oh my gosh, I used to have POTS and I haven't thought about it for 6 months, and I'm just realizing I haven't had it because somebody asked this question. That's amazing.
Yeah. And there's other, I mean, this happened yesterday. What day is it? Yesterday. And I was writing another thing in the forum about bracing. And I was writing, and I sorted this out. This was like a similar time period, but you know, I was talking about how to deal with that, and that had gone.
Can you describe what bracing is for people who might not understand what you're discussing?
Yeah, so bracing, and this is interesting because again, this was something that I've always had as long as I can remember, but wasn't aware of. But it is, if you like, a clenching in the body, but it is a subconscious, or almost you don't know why it's happening. I mean, frequently, you know, you can tell why it's happening, but it can be completely subconscious and you don't even realize. But it is a stress, you know, effectively it's a stress response, and probably, you know, a trauma response, and it's protective. You know, it literally is bracing for a reason.
Yep. So you've noticed that shifted as well without recognize, like, oh my gosh, where'd that go?
Yeah. And you know, so it's nice to sort of see things go, and not be. I mean, there's so many things you lose track, but it's you know, it's lovely for them not to be around. That's just great. But also, you know, I feel like I've come back. You know, Steve has come back instead of the sad replacement for him that we seem to have found. So you know, that's been really nice, and I've been able to enjoy doing things, and that's like the most gorgeous thing. So I've been really getting back into music, because before, when you're in that collapsed state, it's so difficult to enjoy anything. It's so difficult to even things you enjoy, you know, it's so difficult to reach. And now I'm searching those things out. It's like, I want to go and do that. You know, I see a guitar and I want to go and pick it up. You know? I can barely play it, but that's
and right there, for the listeners, this is a hallmark for when I see people start to shift out of chronic fatigue. They have this drive, this want, this go towards energy that starts to awaken in them again. And ultimately, that's part of the anecdote of chronic fatigue is I want to do that, and I need some energy for that. And that command enters our mitochondria. The mitochondria is like, gets the energetic command of, I would like energy for this, please. Right? Because this is what I want to do. So yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. And it's, you know, I've been able to make a start on the, you know, there's a bit of a backlog in the old Steve's life. You know, so I've been able to have a go at some of those things.
Resolving the old wounding, or
no, I mean, I was actually talking about some practical, you know, having some function.
The backlog of the things that needed to be done.
Yeah, I mean, you can't see what's behind me down here.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah. So so a load of yeah, things feeling very different, and also starting to get back to work as well, Kat.
Yes. Tell us a little bit about that. So Steve is one of our Primal Trust coaches. What has that been like for you? What do you feel like you have to offer because of your experience? What do you love about it? How is that affecting your process?
Well, it's just been another step change, to be perfectly honest. It's been another step change. I mean, it was a step change to consider doing it. And because for a long time, even though I felt improvement and that Steve was coming back, when it, giving up work has been like a horrible thing for me. Partly because I so strongly identified with it for so many years. It was the only thing that kept me going, and it was the only part of me really that existed. So then not having it at all was quite, that was really hard. And so constantly I've been asking the question of, how can I get back to work? How quickly can I get back to work? How can I fix not being working? And so often, the voice inside me was just, there's just no way that can happen. You just can't do that. You're not ready. You can't do it. It was so painful. There's no way you can go back to that. And then there was, but I was always entertaining the, what could I do? What can I do? How can I? And then there was just this little thing about, well, you could do this. You could do some of this. You've got the skills and the knowledge and the want. So you actually could do that. And so you very kindly provided, that special platform, and it's been a joy. It's been an absolute joy, because helping people who have been where I've been, there kind of isn't anything more, there's nothing more good than that. There's nothing more fulfilling. There's nothing, there isn't anything, there's been a lot of values work being done in Primal Trust at the moment. And I've been helping quite a few people with their values, and everybody's sharing their values around the forum. And, a lot of people have meaning in there. Meaning, or meaningful work, or meaningful relationships, or just meaning. And, for me, there isn't anything more meaningful than helping people have been where I've been, because, I've been in dark, horrible places, and I see it in other people now, and I know where they are. So, being able to help them, feels, really powerful, really good.
I've loved witnessing your transformation since I've met you, almost a year and a half ago, and watching Steve birth himself. And now you're able to help others do the same, because you know what it's like to be completely lost and dark, and the things that you've done to understand the thing and to discover you. And I think that that's one of the things you bring to the table is deep understanding of suffering, and deep understanding of the pathway to pull out of suffering.
Yeah. And it's, it's not a skill you go for, just,
What a school to understand suffering.
What do you want to be when you grow up, Steve? Well, yeah. But the funny thing is, it's, at the moment, it feels like, a lot of things have fallen into place, which have helped me do this. So, as a management consultant, I was always, it's a problem-solving role. You get dropped in and it's like, what's going on here? Tell us what's going on. And then what do we do about it? And so it's similar in a lot of ways. And, you know, I've always been a really good critical thinker and making connections and understanding things and linking things together. And, you know, and I think that helps people as well. You know, because sometimes, especially when we're in that collapsed state and our brains just aren't working, you know, literally, I mean, people talk about brain fog, but cognitive dysfunction frequently, you know, people just can't think the way that they used to be able to or should be able to. And it's really helpful for them to have somebody that knows, that understands where they are, what they're dealing with, what the problems are, and has been through Primal Trust.
Yeah.
So
for people who are listening and maybe they relate to your experience of being completely in shutdown, maybe chronic fatigue, maybe just whatever, what advice do you have, or what do you wish you would have done differently? Like, what would you say to the person who's like, oh my gosh, that's me. How do I get out of this? What would you say?
The number one thing, I think, is that you've got to start with, I think, you've got to just really take it back and really just give yourself some real love. And because frequently, you know, when people are in this state, we're so hard on ourselves. We are so hard on ourselves, and frequently other people are hard on us as well. Double hard, because they don't understand, and at some point they don't really care. And you then have to bear that as shame as well. So to start with, you've really got to just be so kind to yourself, you know, and stop pushing and fixing and trying to be everything for everybody. Because that's the other thing, even though you're debilitated and can barely do what you're doing, and you're a zombie, you're doing some things, but you're a zombie. Just watching my focus come in and out here. Yeah. This camera is awful.
Yeah, you need to
I'll stand still. I move around too much. I've got this energy.
Yes.
Yeah, so to start with, you've got to love yourself. And then you've got to get you've got to understand what it is. And hopefully, if you're watching this or similar videos, you're in that space. And you've got to do something about it, and take some control. And when I say do something about it, I'm absolutely not talking about you've got to go and push and you've got to do more. I'm actually talking about reining that all back in. You've got to take, you've got to take some real responsibility for moving yourself forwards, and you've got to do something about it. And you really need to get help of some description. And if you're watching this, you should, I can't imagine there's anybody watching this that shouldn't be signing up to Primal Trust, you know, because if you're even inkling, if you're inkling about it, then honestly, it's a no-brainer. So, because it's ridiculously good value as well.
Now you're embarrassing me. I'm blushing. Thank you.
Honestly, if you think it's too good to be true, it is.
Thank you.
Sorry, I shouldn't be saying that.
Thank you. Well,
yeah, but
we are here to go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, you know, I'm joking around there, but it's true. You know, get some help, do something about it. It's doable. It's really doable, but it's really hard. You know, it's really hard, and it's not quick. But you need to get it. That's the first thing, is that you need to get it. You need to understand what it is and all the facets.
The patterns. You gotta
So you
see
need
the
that info. Yeah. But then you need the belief. Then you need to believe it. So knowing it and getting it and understanding it isn't enough. You've got to actually believe it. And then you've got to live it all day, every day, really.
Yeah. You've got
So
to
do
live
that.
Yeah, so just do that.
Yeah.
But you know what? You're an example of somebody who should have been defeated and had given up a long, long time ago. And you didn't. You looked for the thing, understood the pattern, saw the disconnect between you and your own love. And it was like, oh my gosh, I need to take responsibility to show up for myself in this way and repattern myself or repattern my identity so that a new Steve could come forward. And that's what's happening and continues to happen. And now you're allowing others to do the same. So I so appreciate this. And any last words as we close out the interview here?
No, I think that's good. Well, yeah, my last words are thank you. So, it's nice to be able to put on record because you've been, a really properly significant person in my life now. So I can't thank you enough.
Well, it means a lot to be able to bring you here as a spotlight interview from where you were a year and a half ago, and to see you coming forward into the world and leading people. It's really beautiful. It's my favorite transformation. It's watching people. It's not just their own healing, recovery, transformation. It's now about the world, and that's just so beautiful. It's so beautiful. So it's been a pleasure to witness you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Please subscribe if you haven't, so that you can be notified of new videos and teachings. Thank you.